A forensic audit would be very helpful for my divorce from narc husband who is hiding income. Is it the judge who orders it? If so, what is required to make a case for a judge to order it? That is a really good question, and I really like that question. So the times that you would generally hire a forensic accountant in a divorce would be for three major areas. One is for if you have a valuation issue, like you need to value a business that somebody owns, or maybe a portion of a business or a share of a business or something like that. That's one main reason. The next main reason might be for a lifestyle analysis. So somebody is wanting alimony or some sort of spousal support. Lifestyle is an area that people can look at, the judge can look at in your particular state, country, or jurisdiction. You know, how much money did you spend on your lifestyle throughout the course of the marriage? So that's a second area that they can look at. And the third area is the income issue, which is what you're asking me about, Athena. And the times where you really want to look at what somebody's true income is when it's not readily obvious, when it's not super easy to do. And the only time it's really super easy to do is if somebody is like an employee, a W-2 employee, and they only get paid from one source, and it's from some company that they don't own, and they get a W-2 at the end of the year, and that's their income. And so and you can look at their pay stubs, and all that is like really, really readily available. If you have a situation like that, you don't need a forensic to help you with income. If you have a situation, though, where the income is not readily obvious, and the easiest one with that is if somebody owns their own business, or they're in some sort of a business where they get paid partially in cash or something like that, then it's harder, especially if they own their own business, though, because if they own their own business, it's possible that they are writing off a lot of expenses that maybe are allowed to be written off according to the IRS. But from a divorce standpoint, some of those expenses that may be allowed to be written off, you know, by the IRS can be added back in the divorce. So, for example, a good example of that is like maybe your car payments. So maybe all or a portion of your car payments can be deducted from income, especially if it's a S corporation. And then that takes off income that would flow through to your personal tax return. So that kind of income can be added back in when you're trying to find out what somebody's true income is in a divorce. And the income comes into play in really three major areas in a divorce. It's the spousal support, child support, and also any claims for attorney's fees. So it is really, really important to figure out what somebody's true income is. So if you engage a forensic accountant, then you can do that. Now, if you want to engage a forensic accountant, you can just engage a forensic accountant. And then you would ask the judge, or you would ask the other side through a request to produce or something like that for the financial documents. You are entitled to them. So you don't need to have the judge order a forensic accountant to be appointed unless you want that forensic accountant to be a neutral third party. But you know, I think you just want to hire your own, and then you just ask the other side for the financial documents that you want or that you're going to need. Usually what I do as the lawyer is I ask the forensic accountant, give me a list of the documents that you need, and then I turn it into a formal request to produce, and I send it over to the other side. At that point, the other side does have the option to, you know, object to those requests if they want to. But if they object to the requests, then you're going to set those objections for hearing, and you're going to go in front of the judge and you're going to say, I need those documents because we're trying to figure out what his true income is. And the judge is going to say, well, income is certainly relevant in this case. So I'm going to order the other side to go ahead and give the documents. And if that's what happens, then at that point, you're going to ask for attorney's fees because you had to go through that whole exercise. So basically, once you during a divorce, either side can ask for all kinds of financial documents and information, and then they have to produce it unless they want to object to it. And if they object to it, they better have a darn good reason, because you are entitled to have full financial disclosure, and you should have full financial disclosure before you go in front of a mediator or try to do any kind of dispute resolution in the case. You will want to make sure that you have all the information that you need. So let me talk just also for a minute about hiding income as far as like people who get paid in cash. It's, very hard to track. So sometimes the way that we track that is through what we call like a reverse lifestyle analysis, which is how much has been being spent on things. In other words, this couple could not have had this lifestyle unless there was money coming in from somewhere. I've seen people where on paper they look like they make $25,000 a year, but they live in $1 million house and their kids go to private school and they both drive luxury vehicles. And okay, so where's the money coming from? So you can do like what we call a reverse lifestyle analysis if you think somebody is hiding income as well. That's another way that you can do it. The other way is like if somebody is, let's say they own a restaurant or something like that, and a lot of people pay in cash. And this is the most expensive way, is you actually have an auditor go sit in the restaurant from, open till close for like a full week and watch every single transaction that goes through that place. That is extremely expensive to do. I don't recommend it unless there's lots and lots of money that needs to be counted. And at that point, you would need a court order to allow that to happen. Otherwise, you can't just have somebody go sit in somebody's business for a week or whatever. So you would need a court order to allow that to happen. So that's a really, really good question from Athena. And I wanted to make sure that I addressed that in a lot of different ways, because when you are dealing with narcissists, there's oftentimes a problem with hiding money or using money to control the other side. So, I did a survey in my Facebook group, and it turned out that money was like the number one way that narcissists use to control their soon-to-be ex-spouses. So it is a really, really important topic. And because income does impact so many things, it impacts so much of the divorce process, it really is important to get a handle on what somebody's true income is. So, and by the way, there's one other little secret that I want to give you guys when it comes to looking at somebody's true income. Even if they are a W-2 employee, you will want to potentially subpoena their pay records from the company and ask the company to give you the information as to where the pay has been directed, maybe over the last couple of years, what accounts, account numbers, routing numbers, all that sort of thing. So that way you can see if any money has been directed somewhere else, like a bonus or something like that. That's a really, really kind of a tricky thing that nobody else has really ever. If your ex is hiding assets in other states than where you both live, does one have to hire an attorney in other states to do discovery and subpoenas? Generally, you don't have to hire an attorney. Again, this is really a very legal question for your particular state. But in general, you can just send out subpoenas. You have to file them with your local court to give notice to the other side that you're going to be sending these out, these third-party subpoenas out, so that they have a chance to object, and then you can send out the subpoenas. Now, the problem may come if that entity in the other state doesn't comply. Most of the time they do. But if they don't comply, then you might have to hire an attorney from another state to help you enforce the subpoena. And sometimes you have to have have those subpoenas turned into a court order from that particular state's jurisdiction. So in general, you can send them out, but they kind of don't necessarily have to comply with them unless it becomes an order of the court in which the state, is where that entity is. So that's kind of a general answer because I'm probably not licensed in the state that you're in, but most often what I've seen is you're doing subpoenas to banks and credit card companies, and most often they just go ahead and comply, regardless of what the state the subpoena came from. And the bottom line is, if you're dealing with subpoenas in divorce, if the other side is objecting to getting credit card statements and bank statements and things like that, they're going to have to answer to the judge in the particular jurisdiction that you're in, because, what are you trying to hide? The judges aren't going to take too kindly to that, because they want both sides to be completely forthcoming so that the judges know how to rule on the case. They need to figure out what property people have, what debts people have, what kind of income there is, so that they can figure out alimony support, child support, things like that. So, it's kind of a fine line to walk if people are going to be objecting to subpoenas for things that the courts know that need to be disclosed in order to come to a resolution of the case. So, so that's the kind of long answer on that. Have you ever met somebody, they started off to be the most charming, charismatic person you've ever met in your life, then they turned out to be your worst nightmare, and then when you go to negotiate with them, they're a living hell? Well, I developed something called the SLAY method of negotiating with narcissists, and it has helped tens of thousands of people in more than 150 countries win, go from feeling drained and defeated to getting the outcomes they want. And the reason why it works is because I spent more than 20 years studying narcissism as a trial attorney, and now I'm here to help you win too, and also take your suffering and turn it into your superpower. Take your pain and turn it into profit, peace, and purpose as a highly specialized, high conflict negotiation coach. If you want to learn how to do it, then just go to RebeccaZung.com/apply, and I will show you how.
Strings attached. So spending money with strings attached, anything related to kind of giving with expectations of something in return. And I think one thing I'll just say about a lot of the items on our list that we'll talk about today, there's a handful of them that do come up in regular kind of healthy, functional relationships. And so it's not that one of these tricks in and of itself means that you're in an financially abusive relationship with a narcissist. But when you start to see some of these things add up and you've got a little bit of history and a pattern, that's where you can start to kind of identify that these are some of the mind games that they play.
Yeah, I mean, narcissists are inherently extremely, extremely selfish people. They are scarcity mentality to the extreme. So they don't like to part with their money. That's for sure. They're kind of like, they go back to that whole toddler's creed. What's mine is mine. What's yours is mine.
Oh, you just took my number 10.
Oh, always number 10.
That was it. What's mine is mine, and what's yours is ours.
Oh, yes. Yeah, exactly. And so, yeah, I mean, they don't like, if they give you anything, there's definitely massive strings attached, right? I mean, and so what does that mean exactly? If they give you something with strings attached, what does that mean?
It just means they're giving with something with expectations that they're going to get something in return, or that they're giving in order to maintain control. So that's the thing you just have to remember whenever you're dealing with a narcissist, is that really everything that they do is about maintaining control, maintaining dominance. And so even the things that may seem innocuous or like they're just being generous, they're actually not. They're doing it from more of a manipulative point of view. And so whenever there's a dinner or a gift or any of those types of things, you have to ask yourself, are there some strings attached to it? And if you've been in that relationship for a while, you'll start to be able to differentiate between those very, very easily.
Yeah, there's something they want, or there's some reason behind it, like to, get you to do something or to like maintain control over you or something like that. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. And withholding is like a huge biggie. I mean, they withhold anyway. They withhold information, they withhold, just like sometimes they just like they ghost you on like texting you back or just
Yeah,
they
a lot. I
disappear.
think to that point, a lot of the mind games that take place around money are also ones that you'll see take place around other aspects. So it's still all part of kind of that same playbook. Money tends to be one way that a narcissist can use to try and maintain that sense of control. But these types of tricks and all of these tactics that they use, you'll find them appearing in non-financially related aspects as well. Absolutely.
So how will they withhold as far as money is concerned?
Yeah. So like one example is an allowance. A lot, like, it's not that there's no access to money, because to a certain extent, if there's no access to money, then they may actually be shooting themselves in the foot and lose control because they're forcing you to do something more drastic. So a lot of times what they'll do is give a small kind of allowance for all of your personal spending. Usually it's not enough. And we're not talking about a situation like, it's really common in families that one spouse kind of takes the lead role with managing finances, another one may take the lead role with maintaining the household, and there's really a healthy division of labor based on what your interests are, what your skill set is, where do you have experience, all those types of things. This isn't about that. This is about giving you a specific dollar amount so that if you want anything above that, you've got to come back to them and ask for it. And then they're able to, again, exert that additional control, which is certainly going to be a theme of any and all conversations that revolve around narcissists.
Yeah, for sure. And another one for sure is sort of like this passive aggressive thing. And I actually experienced it myself in a business partner relationship. It wasn't, I haven't been in a relationship with a narcissist in a romantic sense, but I did have a covert narcissist in a very short-lived, thank God, business situation. And it was like this passive aggressive kind of a thing where, hey, weren't you supposed to put the money into this account? And yeah, I didn't know how to deposit it. I have to ask my bookkeeper. So I put it in this other account, my account, and, a couple months would go by and where's the money? How come it hasn't gone into the business account yet? And so I found myself like in this weird position of like, do I ask about it? Do I not ask about it? And then like, I'm sort of like, am I like the bad person because I'm like asking about it? And, and then I ask about it. Oh, I told you I needed to ask my business, my CPA about it. I'm definitely going to do it. And they kind of make you feel bad. Like, you know, I'm a
And
good person.
that's the thing. You start to, the more as these kind of tactics add up, once you're able to identify it and name it, a lot of that kind of goes away. But until you've really until that's crystallized in your mind, it becomes where you start to question yourself. Should I be doing this? Did I do something wrong? Am I making a mountain out of a molehill? All these things kind of start to build up where you start to look internally until maybe you have kind of that light bulb moment of, well, actually, here's what I'm dealing with. I think that's one of the reasons why everything that you do in terms of your content is can be so helpful to people, because it really can help someone to identify what some of these tricks are and be able to name that.
Well, and exactly, because especially the coverts, like, what I was just describing, because like when you mention something about that type of, behavior to somebody else, other people go, well, I'm sure that must have been inadvertent because that person is so nice. Obviously, I'm sure they didn't mean it that way, and then again, it only serves to make you think you're crazy once again. And, here you go back to feeling like bad, and you're ashamed once again, crazy again, and that again, it's this mind game, right? So
it's exhausting.
Yeah, it is definitely exhausting, okay, so let's talk about you had some great ones with how they play this sort of shell game about where they put debt and title and in whose name and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, and those two things kind of go hand in hand. I tend to see when I'm working with clients who talk to me about how they're kind of divorced, their spouse, their husband, wife, whatever, is a narcissist. It's not at all uncommon that I'll see a lot of the debt ends up in your name, and a lot of the kind of title to the assets ends up in their name. This is not something that tends to happen by happenstance. It's really part of the plan to take out credit cards in your name, mortgages, all of the debt. Ultimately, if things go awry and you split, you're going to be kind of stuck holding the bag. Whereas they'll try and convince you to sign a quitclaim deed or an interspousal transfer deed in order to take title to the house and put it into their name, or joint. So all of these are things that are trying to basically accumulate the good stuff on their side of the equation and take all the bad stuff and stick that over on your side.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and one of the things I've seen before too is like, the good spouse or whatever was like the saver, and saved up all their money, and then the other spouse was like the spender and spent all of their money, and so now they didn't realize that, oh, I'm gonna have to hand over half of everything I saved to the the person who was just frittering all their money away. Oh, great, thanks a lot.
Yeah, and I think that's a nice lead in for another one, which is kind of the blame and shame. So, a lot of times there's going to be a real double standard in terms of how money is spent. And in those situations, you could go out and spend money for tutoring for little Johnny, or dance class for Sally, or things that are really kind of part of the day-to-day, and receive a lot of criticism around that. Whereas there may still be, and they're going to be judging you for spending money in kind of the basic ways, whereas they don't expect there to be any repercussions or judgment around their spending money on lavish vacations or taking trips to Vegas, or whatever it happens to be. That's another one that I see come up a lot, is this double standard around how money is spent.
Yeah, and another thing, actually, as you're saying this, and this kind of goes back to that mind game thing too, is like that sort of shaming you. I mean, there's the double standard for sure, but then there's like that shaming you kind of a thing, like, well, you don't get to spend money because you didn't work for it, or you're just lazy, or you're not capable of earning anything, or you don't have an education, or you're just greedy if you ask for anything. Something like that. Like there's like this inherent sort of thing. And I've had a lot of people who will say to me, like, I'm not greedy, I just want like just enough to like, cover this, or I'm not asking for this part, or I'm not asking for that, or, I'm not asking for any money. Sometimes, like a lot of times people will say, I'm not asking for any money. And almost as if that's dirty, like it's dirty to ask for money. And I'll have to like correct people sometimes and go, what's wrong with asking for money? Like, let's just shift our mindset around that. Let's have a conversation around what's wrong with asking for money if the law provides for you to get half the retirement, or you to get half the assets, or for you to get alimony, or for you to get child support. If the law is providing for that, the law is agnostic.
Right. Really, I mean, it really means that their games have started to wear away at you. They've started to work. That manipulation is paying off because your sense of reality begins to get a little bit skewed. And you start to see things through the lens that they've kind of created for you. All those different smoke and mirrors really kind of start to skew your own sense of self and what's fair and what's equitable. So yeah, and I think the other thing that I see, as you were saying all of those things, is it actually doesn't matter. Like it no matter what the actual circumstances are, they'll find a reason to be able to make you feel shameful. Even if you're making more money or are more successful or whatever it is, they're going to find something, an area of weakness, and they're very, very good at that, to be able to kind of exploit whatever insecurities you might possibly have. And if you don't have them, then they'll probably try to create them. And that's kind of how they try to look for their prey to a certain extent.
It's so true. I mean, I had a client one time who was a doctor. She was a hospitalist, and her husband was this guy who had basically been homeless or something. I mean, he was a total loser in a lot of ways. Good looking guy, but really had just kind of banged around, had never really held a good job or anything. And her parents had basically like begged her to come to me to do a consultation. And, he was a con artist. He was kind of like that Dirty John guy, she didn't even end up divorcing him. She was, but during the consult, she was like, this isn't normally who I am. I very, very successful woman. And here she was like so bewitched and beholden to this guy who just felt like she was nothing without him, and truly believed that. And here you're looking at it from the outside in, you're like, are you kidding me? Like, seriously? I mean,
yeah.
But
it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of work to be able to kind of peel off those different layers that end up kind of coming on to you, and be able to get back to your true sense of self. It really does take a lot of work.
And just to kind of go back to something you said, a lot of times that shaming and all of that, it hasn't just started during the discard phase or like right at the time of the divorce or whatever. It started, back at the beginning almost of the relationship. They've started imprinting and conditioning you to believe that you're nothing without them, that no one else loves you like they do, that you can't function without them, that you need them in order to to function, you know, like that they have to have control over you. They want you to believe all of those things. And you know, so that's all part of these mind games. And then so like that shaming that they do, you know, for wanting anything for yourself is that's kind of started like I think a long time before sometimes.
Oh, absolutely. It usually doesn't start right away, because if it starts
Oh no, the love bomb, they have to love bomb. Yeah.
Exactly. You gotta get it going a little bit, but then after they've pulled you into their web, that's when they really start playing those games.
Yeah. So all right, so what can they do about it? Let's shift to what can they do about it.
Absolutely. I mean, I think to me, the first and most important thing is to be able to name it. You need to be able to kind of come to grips with the reality of who you're married to, in a relationship with, have a business partnership with, whatever type of relationship it is. You need to be able to kind of call a spade a spade. Until you can do that, you really can't begin to take any sort of steps to be able to address anything else, because you're actually not able to see reality for what it is. So that, I think, is the first and kind of most important thing to do. The second one is holding your cards close to the vest. And so, you know, what you need to understand is anything that you reveal can and will be used against you. You know, this is very much like if you're talking to a police officer. You're not going to say anything that's going to end up helping you in that situation. The more information that you reveal, the more transparent that you are, the more that's all going to come back kind of to bite you, because they're going to use that information. They're observing and kind of taking mental notes about, well, how can I use this for leverage? How can I exploit this weakness? All of that is really part of the game. So you want to make sure that you aren't more transparent than you need to be and more forthcoming than you need to be.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I know like when I decided to try to exit like the business relationship that I was in, I was like, you know, I mean, I you know, I told this person I wanted to be out of the relationship, but you know, I had to be really, really careful about, you know, how much to reveal about what I was working on otherwise or whatever, because I mean, you know, they need as much narcissistic supply as they can. And, you know, they attach themselves to you because they want that supply. And if there's any supply to be had that's happening around you, they want to make sure that they're not going to be missing out on that. So, you know, you got to be careful about, you know, what to reveal there. And
what did you
go ahead?
What did you have any steps that you took that were particularly effective in getting out of it? Was it tough to kind of remove yourself from that partnership?
I mean, you cannot allow yourself to be emotionally triggered, because they are definitely going to try to trigger you. And you can't look back. I mean, I was just talking to a client the other day, and she was like, well, maybe because the guy was like back into like trying to love bomb her into coming back into the relationship, you know, and she's like, maybe I could just keep him in the love bomb stage. I'm like, no. That is not happening. They don't like the love bomb stage. Like, you're not going to be able to do that.
If you figure that out, let us know.
Yeah, like, no, it's not happening. You know, so like, I mean, I just was like, no matter what, I'm moving forward and I'm getting the hell out of this thing. And, you know, and it always gets worse before it gets better. And they're always horrible at the end because they don't want to see their narcissistic supply walking out the door.
They feel the control slipping through their fingers.
Well, yeah, they're feeling their supply walking out the door. I mean, it's like they're vultures, and so they're seeing their food source like leaving.
Yeah.
And it's funny because they're horrible to you, and yet they want you to stay. Like, why would I stay when you were horrible? But yet that's, you know, how they are. But you know, you just got to keep going and not look back, and then cut off all forms of communication, like block them on every single platform. And, and really for me, like, I just tried to like not even have any communication with anyone who was in communication with that person. Like, I really tried to do that as well. So that, there was no possible form of communication. That's what worked best for me. But I was lucky. It wasn't a romantic situation, and
no kids. There
no
were all
kids.
these all of this different entanglement that you can't find a way to truly sever.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, when it's a divorce situation, it's like, I'm sure so much worse. So what else can you
Yeah,
say?
other steps. I mean, I think, it really is kind of a cat and mouse game. And so in that sense, the narcissist is the cat and you're the mouse. And so you really need to understand, as a mouse, you don't want to become a cat, but you really need to understand how a cat thinks, how they operate, how they pursue their prey, in order to be able to stay one step ahead. There was someone that I was interviewing at one point around kind of financial abuse in narcissistic relationships, and the analogy that she used with the victims of this financial abuse was that of a rose. And so the idea there was, a rose has thorns. A lot of people, when they're leaving a narcissistic relationship and trying to get out, they end up kind of overcorrecting. They have a tendency to overcorrect in the other direction. And so now they kind of put up all of these defense mechanisms, because you start to understand that you're, by being vulnerable, that's what kind of exposed you to this relationship. And so I really like the analogy that she used with the rose and the thorns, because a rose is a rose and it has thorns. And so the idea there is you can kind of you want to be able to identify the people that you need to have your walls up with, that you aren't vulnerable with, that you don't reveal information, but you don't want that to seep into all of your other relationships that are good quality relationships with people where that vulnerability really is what enables you to have some of those close relationships. So it's not that you're changing your identity. It's that you actually have both of these things. You have the beautiful flower and you have the thorns. And so I thought that was kind of a really powerful, compelling metaphor in a sense.
Yeah. I mean, I would definitely say, gather as much financial information as you can before you leave the house, if you can.
Stockpile cash. You
Definitely
absolutely
stockpile cash. Definitely, go around them if you can, like by just going straight for the subpoenas and that sort of thing, rather than, trying to get it out of them through a request for productions or something, because they're always going to play this stupid game of giving you part of it or not giving you it at all, whatever. For sure. There's always going to be this little, you know, game as far as giving you documentation during the actual court case, for sure.
And you need to decide in that sense of like, what's the right path? Does mediation make sense if you're divorcing, an extremely rigid narcissist, or are you really just setting yourself up for a situation where you kind of are going to have a choice of kind of agreeing with all of their demands, and even then they're going to kind of move the goalpost, because the closer they get to done, the closer they are to, like you said, losing some of that narcissistic supply.
Well, I mean, if you have enough leverage, through the SLAY program, maybe mediation would definitely work. But it just depends, sometimes it's a good idea. I mean, a lot of times it's a good idea.
Yeah. And I think it's not one size fits all, right? So
Yeah.
I don't mean to imply that mediation is not a good path in that type of situation. It's just, you really have to be realistic.
And you have to be ready. You have to be
Yeah.
ready. For
Yeah,
sure.
there's a lot of situations where someone's self-represented or mediation, and they spend so much time and money trying to make a process work that just may not
Right.
have a
You
chance.
definitely have to know what you're doing for sure.
Exactly.
This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. We often talk about red flags we should avoid, but what if we focus more on green flags in friends and partners? Whether you're dating, married, building a friendship, or just working on yourself from time to time. So how about we work on the relationships that are gonna love you back, including yourself? I know for me, therapy has been absolutely game-changing, and learning how to love myself, set boundaries, and overcome all sorts of blocks I didn't even realize I was creating for myself. I just knew I wanted to be the best version of myself that I could be. What I love about BetterHelp is that they make therapy totally accessible and convenient. The network is totally diverse, more than 30,000 credentialed therapists with a wide range of specialties. Plus, if you don't gel with one, you can just easily switch therapists anytime at no extra cost. Discover your relationship green flags with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/negotiate today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/negotiate.
So explain more about this feminine, masculine, and
Sure.
the narcissist trying to steal your power. So in other words, if you are a powerful woman and you're in a relationship with a man who is trying to steal your power, are you saying that that woman is going to have a harder time making money because she is giving her power to that man because she is holding that money power away from herself? Explain
So,
that.
so let me give you an example. Whenever I hear someone saying, I support him, I'm paid for everything, I already know there's an imbalance in that relationship. She's in her masculine and he acts like he's an alpha, but he's a beta, you know? So there's a really such situation like that where you'll see a woman. My mother supported all of us. She put me through law school, helped with law school, put my brother through med school. And I think part of her was guilt too, because she knew she needed to get out of that marriage, which she's finally getting divorced from him, which I'm so happy.
She watched a lot of my videos, by the way.
She did.
That's how you recognized me. That's how we met.
Yeah, well, it's crazy because I told my mom to go watch you actually, and I remember seeing her. I'm like, I actually watched your videos, to be quite honest with you, because I was looking up narcissists and I saw you, and I'm like, this lady is amazing.
Because we were at that club, and you were like, I know you. It was so crazy.
Oh my God, it was
amazing.
amazing.
Yeah. So anyway, we're digressing. Go ahead. Because I really want to hear this. This is really fascinating to me.
So women who are a lot of single moms are predominantly in their masculine energy.
Let's say they're in a relationship with a husband, and you're saying like,
if he's not working, most of the time,
say he's working, but he makes a lot less.
Right. That's what I'm saying. There's an imbalance in there. And so usually it's because they feel entitled, like you should be taking care of them.
Or like he makes a lot less, but yet he is like treating her badly because of it, because he feels jealous or something.
She's always going to be feeling like she owes him and to help support him. And so she's always going to be over delivering on her love and feeling like she's got to keep taking care of him, because there's that factor that comes in that toxic relationship of feeling sorry for them, right? Because they're always going to have a story of what's happening, why they can't afford what, or they want to live a bougie life, because they'll always act flashy. They'll always be like, they acting like they have more than what they do because they want people to look at them, that they're successful. Meanwhile, they're leaning on another woman to help them being successful. So there's one avenue like this, but you take a woman out of that situation and you take a high achiever, and she could be married and in a relationship, but what her relationship with money is based upon is her relationship with the masculine energy. And many of the times, most of my clients have trauma. They have some level of trauma and toxicity that's happened to them in their lives. It could come from the mother's masculine, because a lot of my clients do have narcissistic moms, and it could come from the man. When a woman does not feel safe with that safe masculine, with any masculine energy, she won't feel safe with money. Because what money does for us is it provides us a roof over our head. gives us security, makes us feel safe. And once we have a certain amount of it, we feel relaxed a little bit. Okay, we're safe now. But really, it's a false sense of safety, because the moment that that money could go away, you're back into that like fight or flight mode, and you're feeling anxious, right? So it's being able to feel safe even if you don't have the money, but with the masculine energy, until you could heal your toxic patterns with the masculine, which usually looks a lot like a traumatic, narcissistic relationship, attachment issues and whatnot. Until you can heal through that, the chances of you feeling super safe with money doesn't happen. So you'll see women who are even making 8 figures still feeling in this scarcity, because there's abundance and scarcity is a victimhood, right? You'll still see them with their patterns coming through in their business and the way they operate with money, how they hire staff members, who they allow in their place. And it's so interesting, because when someone tells me something about how they believe about money, I can really trace it back to the trauma. I can trace it back to the relationship with the I'm having a blanket with the narcissistic or the unhealed masculine in their life, their toxic masculine in their life. I can always trace it back to them not feeling safe. But the flip side of this is that they're very successful in executing and doing things and getting things done. But we want to take it to the next level, be executing, but also then feel safe. Now, when my clients go through my program and they come through me, like just recently, a client said she was born in poverty, had a lot of trauma, a lot of toxic relationships. I finally feel safe with money. I know that when I spend it, when I use it, it comes back even more. Like there's no attachment, no power there, like where money has power over us. And what I mean is, like, a lot of people want to do things like maybe invest in your program, Rebecca, or do other things. But you know what? I don't have the money. When the money comes in, I'll do that. When the money shows up, I'll do that. But really what you're doing is giving money that power instead of you having the power over it. But once you can heal that underlying relationship, your relationship with money changes.
So what's the first step?
The first step is identifying that you do have one. Like, what is your real relationship with money? And then I would instantly go and find out where your relationship is with the masculine in your life. Are you feeling safe with that masculine? Do you feel safe, with masculine energy? Are you always the person in control? Because being a control freak, being hyper micromanaging, being a perfectionist, with some other things I could think of, maybe even a people pleaser, or identifying your inability to feel safe and allowing money to come in, because you're always trying to control how it comes in instead of being in that feminine and just trusting. So the first thing is I would identify your relationship. Do you feel safe investing? Do you feel safe in spending? And a lot of people say, oh yeah, I do. But when I really look on it, do you buy things for yourself just because, or do you buy things out of a necessity? Because when you can buy things that you actually like, oh, I just love that, I want to buy it, you have a different relationship with money, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so identify your relationship, and then look to see your patterns with the masculine in your life. It could be from your father, it could be for your mother. Do you have a safe relationship? Is there a toxic relationship there that needs to be healed and worked through? Because once you can, you will bring more abundance in your life.
Yeah. Okay. I love that. And so for people who don't have a healthy relationship with that masculine in their life, what do you recommend that they do?
Well, it first starts with us, right? Because we want to take our power back. If I always say this, the Taylor Swift, if you realize, I'm the problem, then you're the solution. So the moment that you can identify that you have the power in you to change, it's getting out of that victim mindset every day, just rewiring your belief systems of realizing that, you know what, I can do something different. I can change this. So I definitely would start with that process.
Then let's talk about some of the other ways that narcissists will abuse you financially. Cutting off credit cards, moving assets, preventing career advancement. Let's talk about some of those other things that they'll do.
So certainly cutting off credit cards is one vehicle, right, to keep somebody essentially under your thumb, right? All of a sudden you don't have the credit cards that will help you pay for the most basic necessities in your life: food, clothing, childcare, all of those kinds of things, right? And your credit limit used to be limitless when the narcissist was feeling magnanimous, and now you have essentially, the narcissist has decided that you're not on the narcissist side. side anymore. And so the credit cards get cut. Your limits go low, if any. And all, you're standing at the grocery store and you can't pay for the groceries, or you have now found yourself so isolated, and you don't have those passwords to even understand what the finances are because the passwords have all been changed. The mail is no longer coming to your home. It may be going to the narcissist's office instead. Or, obviously with online, now you don't have any of that access. And so it is really a strategy to keep you under that person's thumb and to keep you dependent on that person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Moving assets is another one.
Moving assets is very difficult, because once the assets start to move, it makes it much more difficult to trace the assets. And so maybe things were in joint names and all of a sudden there's no more money in that bank account. Or maybe you had a brokerage account and the brokerage account has now been moved, or the assets have now been moved into a different brokerage account. Maybe it was in joint names and now it's only in his or her name alone. And so you no longer have access to the funds and the security that you had access to before, which makes you even more dependent. And look, I think at that point, it's time to it's a wake-up call. I think maybe the wake-up call could have happened earlier, but certainly that is the wake-up call. When assets start moving, when someone is even moving assets to other family members or to friends, and you don't have control of that, perhaps things are being moved into trusts. And all of a sudden, somebody is saying to you, just sign here. It's okay, or taking you to an attorney of their choice to just sign here. Those are warning calls that you need to be aware of.
Yeah. And then they play games, like they'll start paying the bills from, your account first, right?
Yes.
They'll deplete that account first.
Yes, that is another strategy is, again, taking away your control, right? Your safety line. So if they're paying all of the bills from your account eventually is going to be depleted while their accounts are building. Right. And all of a sudden, you don't have enough money to actually go to the attorney. You don't have enough money to go to your therapist to have that conversation about what is happening in your life. You don't have the money to move around in the world. I think what people really need to understand, and money sometimes is a dirty word. People don't like to talk about finances, but to work in the world, to move around in this world, you need money. That's just a fact. And if someone is taking your control of your finances away from you, that is a wake-up call that you need to do something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then they'll start to play games during the case, right? So what they'll do is they will play games with the discovery. So you want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. So let's talk about what discovery is, first of all, because I think that a lot of our clients, I know when we start actually dealing with discovery, they want to know what it is. So what we do usually at the very beginning of a case is we serve, meaning send, discovery notices to your spouse's attorney. And those have a list of documents that we're going to be looking at. Usually it goes 5 years back. Sometimes it could go longer, but we're looking at credit card statements to see how the spending actually has occurred. Is there spending on other people who maybe are outside the marriage, for example, paramours of some sort? Is there gambling that we need to be aware of? Are there transfers of monies to other accounts? There's lots of ways to look at these documents, but essentially credit card statements, bank statements, brokerage statements, statements regarding restricted stock units, bonus and award statements. We want to see it all so that we understand what are the assets, what are the liabilities, and what's the income. And then, of course, what is the lifestyle? Because the lifestyle analysis is going to tell us how much spousal support there will be, or how much spousal support will be paid, right? So we're looking for all of that. So we serve these notices, and then the other side doesn't comply, which is what you're talking about, Rebecca. So maybe they give us whole pile of documents, but they're not really relevant. And then they tell us, we've given you 5,000 documents. We've given you 50,000 documents. Okay, but it's the quality, not the quantity of the documents, right, that we're looking at. And of course, then there's the person who doesn't give you any documents. And now you are left with lots of discovery notices out there and perhaps letters to counsel, et cetera, and your bills are escalating. At some point, your attorney should be subpoenaing everything that they can subpoena directly from the institutions, right? So we serve the discovery notice. If we don't get the discovery, we start subpoenaing. We have to be careful about subpoenaing employers because sometimes that can actually backfire. So we are careful about that. But sometimes we're left with no choice. We have to get the information. So we will subpoena the institutions. One good place to start is the tax returns, because there's usually a schedule in the tax returns that will set forth the dividends and the interest from interest or dividend bearing accounts. And those are great places to start to subpoena.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So she just said so much gold right there. I just want to make sure that we don't gloss over what she just said, because there was so much gold in what she just said that and I just want to make sure that you guys just heard everything that she just said, because as lawyers, I know everything that she just said, but I want to make sure that you guys got to hear everything that she just said. So in a case, there are 5 major areas. I always say 5 major areas. Some people say 4, but I'm going to say 5. So there's property division, and then there's spousal support, and then there's custody, child support, and fees. So those are like the 5 major umbrellas. And when you are looking at the 5 major umbrellas, and every single case has those 5 potential areas, and then there's tangential areas like domestic violence and things like that. But the 5 major areas are those. And in every single case, you have those potential. And if you don't have kids, obviously custody and child support aren't going to be there. But you have those 5 major areas. So when you have some major potential issues, such as waste or business valuations or something like that, then you might have to hire a forensic accountant. And that forensic accountant might need to look at a lifestyle analysis, in order to say, how are we going to come up with what the true income is, or what we need to look at as far as how to come up with, an alimony award or a spousal support award. And so you hire this forensic to help you do that. And what they have to do is they have to actually go back and track every single dollar that was ever spent or ever looked at. And what they do is look at the last 5 years. It's kind of painful, actually. I mean, for them. And, they literally go, how much did you spend on this, shoe purchase, or this grocery store purchase, or this, literally every single dollar. And they put it together into what we call a lifestyle analysis. So that's what she's talking about with that. And tracking every single dollar. And so that's what a lifestyle analysis is. How much did you spend on your pets? How much did you spend on your nails? How much did you spend on, literally, that's what a lifestyle analysis is. And it's kind of painful, but that's what it is. It kind of feels like a rectal exam, I think, honestly. But because you never think that that's what's going to end up happening when you're actually doing it until you go through a divorce, and then that's what it ends up being. But you need to know what somebody's true income is in order to come up with, because it's important for alimony, it's important for child support, it's important for a fees claim. So, true income is really, really important for all 3 of those. So that's what she's talking about for that. Now, when you're talking about subpoenas, so when you actually are trying to get documents from somebody, they can either hand them over voluntarily, but when you're talking about a narcissist, they usually don't. They usually don't. And so what happens is you say, hand over 12 months of bank statements or whatever it is, or 5 years of bank statements. But what happens is they'll hand over everything but December or something like that. And then you're over there going, well, where the hell is December? Or they'll hand over everything except for page 5 or something like that. And you're like, where's page 5? And, and it's so annoying as hell. And all of that costs money because your paralegal's like looking through it and they go, everything but page 5 is in here. And so you have to go, here's a motion to compel. I need page 5. And it gets extremely expensive and time consuming because you're not allowed to just file the motion to compel. You have to prove that you tried to do it, yourselves first, well, at least most jurisdictions you do, right? And so
Good faith, sure.
right. Good faith, try to do it yourself. And then that costs money first. And then you have to, then you can file your motion to compel. So all that costs money. So what she's saying is, instead of doing that, just go straight to, Bank of America and file the subpoena, because at least then, that Bank of America isn't going to piss around. They'll just give you the whole entire statement. That's what she's saying. So it's a little bit more money because Bank of America is going to charge you for the copies, but at least you're going to get the entire statement. So that's what she's saying.
That's 100% correct. Exactly correct. And look, I think that the point of sending the subpoenas in my mind is that sometimes, and I've watched this, right? Lawyer is sending the letter and another letter and another letter. And I'm thinking to myself, why would we be begging for these statements? They're going to come in this beautiful package from Bank of America, for example. They're going to be certified. They can go straight into evidence. They're true and accurate copies, they're business records, and I don't have to now spend all this time begging for my discovery.
Right. And as long as you can get them, I mean, sometimes it's harder because it's an out-of-state subpoena or something like that. It depends on where they're from, right? So sometimes you can't.
Yes.
Now, and what she's saying as far as going to the employer, it can be difficult because if they're self-employed or if the employer is, their friend or something, because it's a small company, well, then he ain't gonna bother because, it's not gonna be probably accurate anyway, But if it's a public company or a big company or something like that, maybe it's worth it to subpoena the records from the employer. So you have to weigh that out.
Yeah, I think that the biggest issue about subpoenaing the records, and you're correct, obviously, if it's a friend, it makes it much more difficult. And I have seen more and more that people can often defer their income, particularly when the business is small. They have, all these different deals going as they're going through the divorce because their buddy went through the divorce too, right? Okay. And so now they're deferring their income and you're really not getting a true picture of the income. But even when, and you have to be careful about this, and particularly in some counties in New York, they are very strict about it. There are employers who are going to get upset about being subpoenaed. And so you really need to have a very good reason. The person has not complied. I usually like to get court permission to do it because then it actually informs the court as to what's going on. Somebody has another opportunity to produce the documentation, but at some point, you need the documentation, and most employers will understand. Most large corporations and institutions are going to understand because a lot of people go through divorce, and so they're used to getting these subpoenas.
Yes, but absolutely. But with out of state, you have to go to the court out of state, and you have to, there's a little bit more of a some steps that you have to go through.
Yes.
To get that. So it's just a little bit more expensive. It's a little bit more time consuming. Sometimes you have to hire a lawyer out of state in order to help you, a process server out of state. It's just a little bit more difficult to do that. Sometimes it's worth it though. I mean, but you just always have to know and weigh the return on your investment. Don't throw good money after bad, right?
That's exactly right, Rebecca, 100%.
So, so let's talk about, other things that people should be doing in order to protect themselves. What other kinds of documentation that they should be looking at, emails, texts, that sort of thing. What else can they do?
So look, first and foremost, I think that people need to make sure when they're signing those tax returns that they actually know what they're signing. Because, we touched, or you touched on this idea of business valuations, for example. And I think that it's very important that people understand that they actually need to make sure that their tax returns are accurate before they sign them, or before they actually allow the accountant to be filing them. And then they should be keeping copies of them. And they need to also remember that the accountant works, if you're filing joint tax returns, for both of you. So the accountant should be providing you a copy. The accountant should be answering your questions. And you should not be, being put in a situation where you're told, sign here, okay, and you're not able to review it, or sign here and you were given 1 minute to get them to the post office, or to tell the accountant to e-file them. So it's very important that you review those tax returns, because they are an admission, essentially, of what the income is. And if you're being misleading, maybe it's not you who's being misleading, but when you file those joint tax returns with your spouse, you are agreeing to the government that this is your income. And so it's very important that I think first and foremost that you deal with that particular issue. The other issue is making sure that you keep records of bank statements, keep records of the credit card statements. Start to gather essentially your file, so that your attorney is not having to hunt down every single thing that is going on. Those bits and pieces that woman gave me, they made her case. They really did. They were millions of dollars, and they came sometimes on little tiny pieces of paper like this big, okay? But, shredded, okay? But $5 million later, okay, she had found that money, essentially. I mean, look, we did subpoena it, we did find it, but essentially she gave us the breadcrumbs to be able to do that. So start gathering your statements, start gathering the credit card statements, keep your eyes open. I think that these are all important things to be doing.
Yes, your attorney is not a mind reader, and there's not some a thing out in the sky where your attorney can go to and find all the information. You have to provide it to your attorney. So the more information that you can bring to your attorney, the better it's going to be.
I'm going to add something, Rebecca, because it comes up a lot, believe it or not. So very often people decide that they're going to fill out these applications for mortgages or for loans, and they're going to have to state what their income is, or whether they've been given gifts, or whether they've been given loans, and they misstate that information, right? And that often comes back to bite them, right? So, for example, a parent may give, the couple or a party a loan. And now they've stated that they have no loans on their application for their mortgage. It was a loan, but they decided to make it into something other than a loan, because they wanted to look more favorable to the mortgage company. And so it's very important that you remember that your words and the things that you sign, the documents that you sign, the documents that you're swearing to, the documents that you're submitting to banks, particularly federally chartered banks, that those are your words and they are your admissions. And so you need to accurately report things, because I will tell you, during a divorce, it will all come back to bite you. One other thing that I think is so important is that people, if they're getting an inheritance, or if they actually are getting a gift from a parent or other family member, that they make sure that that is well documented and that they keep those monies separate and apart. So A lot of people come to us and they have lost what we call separate property in New York. They would have had, for example, they came into the marriage and they have no prenup perhaps, and they have not actually kept their premarital property separate, or they have not kept their inheritance separate. And all of a sudden they have commingled all of these funds. Perhaps they've spent down their inheritance. Perhaps they've spent down their premarital property while they've been saving marital property. All things that you shouldn't necessarily be doing, because if you actually save and keep that separate property separate, you will get a credit at the end if you can trace it. In New York, it is the person who has the separate property claim. It's their burden to trace that separate property in order to get credit for it. But many times people come to us and they have millions of dollars of separate property that they cannot trace. And so it may just be gone. Really important.
Very good advice. Yes, very good advice. And gather those important documents and put them in a safe place. Make copies of them and put them in a safe place.
Yes, yes. Keep them. I think one of my first cases ever was a matrimonial case where the woman had a fabulous prenup. But when she was hospitalized, and when she came back from the hospital, prenup was completely gone. She never saw the prenup again. And the prenup would have been very favorable to her. The attorney was long gone who had drafted the prenup, and nobody was going to be talking about that prenup except for her at that point, and it was gone. So you need to make sure that you keep your documents safe. Make sure that a family member has a copy. Make sure that they are in a place that is not going to just be in your email, and your emails become, are erased, or somebody's gone into your emails and deleted them. Make sure to keep your passwords safe. All of those kinds of things you really need to pay attention to.
Yes, very, very good advice. Okay, so narcissists and their money. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. I mean, they talk about narcissists and fools and their money and how they're never soon parted. And narcissists and their money, my God, you cannot pry narcissists away from their money. Like, it's insanity and their money, especially when it comes to fighting, when the relationship breaks down. Whether it's a business relationship, a divorce, or whatever. I mean, talk about prying it out of their cold, dead hands. They hoard their money like no one else hoard it and hide it. And why? Why are they like that? I mean, they are so cheap. Why are they like that? Well, I mean, there are so many reasons. For one thing, you have to understand the personality type. So let me explain the personality type. You have to picture somebody who is completely and totally empty inside. This is a person who is basically starving, gasping for breath, desperate for air. This is a person who's basically like starving and in survival mode all the time. You have to picture a person who has like a black hole inside of them, and they want you to fill it, and you might want to fill it too, but they can't receive. So you're left feeling depleted, and yet they're still starving. And so you're feeling totally and completely empty and depleted, and yet they're still starving and wanting more and more and more, because there's this black hole, because they can't receive. Okay, so that's why they're in survival mode all the time, and it cannot be fixed. And so it's scarcity to the utmost extreme, and that's how they feel. Okay, and you can't fix it. You cannot fix it. They're like vultures needing an endless amount of this narcissistic supply, and they're always searching for more of it and always searching for a better source of it. So money just symbolizes a source of that supply. And remember, they need grandiosity, they feel entitled. And so all of that, represents power It represents a way of looking like they can be powerful. It also represents control. They can control people through money. So the more they have, the more control they have, the more power they have, and the more they can be powerful over people, the more people adulate them, which they certainly love that. They want more adulation. So the more they have, the more entitled they are, the more people are fawning at their feet. And so obviously that becomes very, very addictive to them, very alluring to them. They want that, and they don't have any empathy for others. So they want more and more and more of this, and they step on whoever they have to get more and more of this. So they're chasing this as much as they possibly can on the way up, a lot of them. So this is one of the reasons that they hoard this, and then they're going to hide this. Now, what happens when the relationship breaks down? Well, you become public enemy number one, of course. I mean, because you're either for them or against them. So when you become public enemy number one, they're going to want to destroy you. So now they're going to try to hide it. They're going to try to hoard it. They're going to use it against you. They're going to want to destroy you with it. And they're going to want to make sure that you don't get any of it. Of course, they don't want to give you any of that money that they earned. They feel entitled to it. They don't think that you should have one single dollar of it. Even if you help them get it, they think that they are entitled to it. I mean, that's just their personality. So that's how they are. And they believe that it belongs to them and that you shouldn't have any of it. You should feel guilty for taking anything from them, and that you should, in fact, feel appreciative for what they earned and what they did for you. And you should be grateful for what they did for you. And that's part of it too. And remember, a lot of narcissists also have a very addictive personality. The more they get, the more they want, the more they have. And so they're trying to hoard it as well. And then the other thing about money is that as they get older, they will lose their looks. It does help with them to have more money because they will have more power. And as they have more power, even though they don't have the looks, they have this power, they have this control, they have all of this money. And so people will want to be with them because they have this money. Narcissists absolutely hate to be alone. And if they have lots and lots of money, people will still want to be with them. It helps with that as well, because they will not have as much with the looks. So people will still want to be around them, and because they don't feel like people will ever want to be with them just for them. So they feel like they have to have some reason that somebody's going to want to be with them. So they feel like people will only want to be with them if they have money or power. And so they need money so that somebody's going to want to be with them for that when they get older, or they need to have looks or something. So money will give them the ticket for people to want to be with them when they get older, because they're going to lose their looks or something like that. So they feel like if they have lots and lots of money and control and power when they get older, that people will want to be with them. So those are some reasons that narcissists hoard their money. They just feel like it's a way for them to have whatever it is that they want in their life. It's their ticket to get people to do things, to get people to adulate them, to have control over people. So of course, it's their ticket for control and power and everything that they want in life, because they feel totally and completely empty inside. So it gives them that external sense of value. So that's why they hoard it. A number of different reasons.
So narcissistic personality disorder is a personality disorder that affects so many people. And it's a stealth kind of personality disorder that most people don't even understand or see until the evil part of it arrives. These people that have this have no sense of value of other people. They really don't hold anything of value to anybody. They are abusive, and they don't start out that way. They start out extremely charming. They start out where they are sudden soulmates with someone, and most of the time while they're in a relationship, their neighbors, their friends, their coworkers will never see the signs that they are being abusive at home.
Now, Tracy, I know you mentioned on your website and in your podcast that you yourself are a survivor of several relationships with narcissists. And this is what's led you to be so passionate about educating people on the topic. Would you mind sharing a little bit of your personal story? Because I think it will sound familiar to many of our listeners.
Sure. I did not know what narcissistic personality disorder was, or that there were people out there that were this crazy. And yet, when I learned about it because I had been in a marriage, and my divorce was just like the things that kept getting thrown at me, the lies, and now I know them as gaslighting, the things that were coming at me, I didn't understand them at all. So I had just gone through this horrific divorce without a label, without understanding, just really confused as to what the heck happened. And I went into a rather quick relationship after that. I was swooped up by another narcissist, only this one was the reason I came to learn all about this. He had me arrested falsely, which is something that happens a lot with victims, because a narcissist will revert to anything that will kind of take you out of the way, get you out of their hair, and without any care or concern for anyone. So once I started to learn about that, for him, people said, look up gaslighting. He's gaslighting you. I looked it up, and it explained my whole divorce. It explained my mother-in-law, my sisters, my own mother. So there was a reason I didn't see this type of behavior. It was because I grew up with people that would ghost me. And I was used to my sisters just disappearing off the face of the earth for no reason at all. And so when I was in a relationship, that just was like, oh, that's not how normal people are in a relationship. So learning about it and trying to understand it, it put me into this seems like it's a calling for me to stand on a soapbox and never stop talking about it, never stop learning, and never stop teaching about it.
Well, first of all, I just want to congratulate you for not continuing to be in that victim mentality, to see this as a calling, to see this as an opportunity. That's what we really want our entire show to be about, that the divorce and the bad things that happen as a result of divorce are actually opportunities for growth and change. So I'm really, I'm impressed that that's what you see it as, and as a result have obviously helped many, many people. So I want to ask you about the warning signs of narcissists and how you can spot them. But if you could, just before you get to that, just give a little bit of a definition on gaslighting, because I don't know that everyone knows exactly what that is. And you did mention that term. So if you could just give a definition of gaslighting, and then go into what the red flags are for narcissists?
Sure. Gaslighting is a way that they try to manipulate the victim to think they're crazy. That means they're telling you stories that simply didn't happen and insisting that you're the crazy one, that you don't remember it happening that specific way. So it challenges your mind to like really dig deep and question, did that happen? And over time, they slowly wear you down to the point where you are questioning yourself. And most survivors that I talk to just sit there with this dumbfounded look on their faces going, I know that didn't happen. And yet he's convinced me or she's convinced me over and over. And finally they give up. There's no hope for them, and they just give up the reality that they thought was real, and they've lost themselves. So it feels really icky, if you would say. It feels that you have no control over what's going to happen. And of course you're walking on eggshells during that, because if you say, no, that's not how I remember it, you'll generally be met with anger. You'll be met with the conflict of the story, and they're telling you, no, this isn't how it is, and you're crazy. How could you believe that? How could you, don't you remember? And it's that kind of wearing down of a person that is their intention. There's a great movie from the 1940s called Gaslighting, and if you haven't seen it, it's really creepy with the old music that they used to play in the background, but the man would actually hide things on his wife and then ask her where her pearl necklace was. And when she would go look for it, she'd be like, oh no, he's going to get so mad at me that I've lost it. But he was like manufacturing this lie, manufacturing her to think that she was crazy. And that's what gaslighting is.
Can I ask, do the narcissists, the people doing the crazy making, coming up with this alternate version of what happened, do they know they're doing it? Is it like is this a plan on their part? I know in that movie, I've seen that movie, and it is fascinating, but that was a very well thought out, plan to make that person think they were going crazy. Do narcissists know what they're doing?
I believe they do, yes, because they're creating this alternate reality. And do they know that they're doing it to mess with your mind? That's to be debated. Do they stick to a story that they believe is true and just push that on? Yes, they do. So I believe that they are doing it intentionally, and there's a maliciousness to it. It's about taking away someone's power. And gaslighting, as all abuse is control. So once they know that they can control you by convincing you of something that didn't happen, then they can control you about every other thing in their life and in your life. So it's a step ladder, if you would, to further and further abuse. If they are not able to mind control you, because that's what gaslighting is, if they're not able to do that, you probably will not be in the relationship very long, because they're looking for someone that they can control. So as soon as you see this reality, which generally happens at the end, at the discard. There's 3 stages of abuse. So it's idealization, and then it's devalue, and after that comes the discard. And most people don't see this kind of behavior until they're out of it, or on the other side looking in going, oh, that's what that was. And so I do believe that they know it and they see it, because it's just, okay, if I can check that box that I got that person to accept this story that I told them, they've got one more step on the control ladder for you.
So back to, I think, Rebecca's question there then. So when someone's getting into a relationship or is in a relationship that's tortured, what are the warning signs or red flags?
Well, there's hundreds of them. There's behavior red flags. There's action red flags. At the beginning, they're certainly different, because the charm that these people have is what captivates everyone. Nobody goes into a relationship going, I want to be with the devil. They just don't. They come into it because the person is everything they've ever dreamed of. And that's part of the red flag kind of abusive behavior, where seems so natural to be sharing your story with the new person in your life, to share every detail that's happened to you before. But what they're doing is they're actually making a list of everything that has happened to you, knowing that they can also get away with it because you didn't see it. So when you're going into a relationship, it's important to know that anyone who rushes intimacy, rushes that relationship. I've heard people get married in 2 months and it was so whirlwind and it was so amazing. And yet the second they got married, like the person completely changed. So it's in that stage. If they're not patient with you and not willing to give you the time, that's a sign that they're trying to rush you to confuse you. By rushing someone into something and making them feel so wonderful, well, on a normal spectrum, that would be a great thing. But on an abusive schedule, that's where they're really just figuring out how to abuse you. And you'll start to see holes in the story. So lies are like gaslighting, lies that just don't make sense. And if they've told you one thing and yet the reality is something else, that's a huge red flag for someone to look at in a relationship. And if they start to isolate you, it's so stealth. You don't really think, oh gosh, he's cutting off my family. But slowly but surely, they pluck off your friends and they go for the weak ones first. When they meet your friends and your family, they're interviewing them too. How is your alliance? How strong are they going to defend and stick up for you? If your family or your friends say, well, she's a very good storyteller, they're going to use that against you later. So they're gathering intel from your friends. And then if your friends and family can be coerced later into becoming what we call flying monkeys, which is kind of like the witch and the Wizard of Oz used the monkeys to do her bidding. That's what flying monkeys are in a narcissistic kind of relationship. But as you're dating and you're interviewing this person, red flags to look for is are there a lot of crazy people in their life? Is their ex a crazy ex? Are they an alcoholic, drug addict? There's a whole list of things that they will, instantly attach to their ex. That's not normal. If everyone in their past is crazy, probably why would they be there? There's something you have to look at. If they experience and display anger towards you for questioning them, they don't like to be questioned. And of course, in the beginning, you're not necessarily questioning. You're believing that love story. You're not going, well, that doesn't make sense. But if you start to question those things, and they get angry, that's definitely a sign that you have to watch out for. And if you feel like any single fight could end a relationship, then that's not a good feeling either. That's not something that you should be thinking is a good, healthy relationship.